Welcome to the first episode of Czar's Top Shelf. My name is John Zaremba. Today we're going to talk about what is perhaps the most important album for me personally in the last 10 years, and that is Corpo-Mente. So some people might consider Corpo-Mente to be an Igor side project, and I can understand why they'd make those assumptions without hearing it, but the music here is quite a bit different than what we get with Igor. This is a very serious, dark, brooding album with bits of optimism sprinkled in as well. We're going to kind of get to that optimism as we listen to the album together. There's no room for whimsy with Corpo-Mente. Igor's music is oftentimes a bit humorous. There's quite a bit of absurdity, deliberate absurdity with Igor. There's none of that here. Like I said, this is a very serious album, and that's primarily why it's perhaps my favorite album in the last 10 years. Corpo-Mente is comprised of four musicians: Anthony Miranda, Nithil Chaville, Gautier Serre, and of course Laure Prunanec. First of all, I know I mispronounced all four of their names. I'm going to mispronounce everybody's names. Most of my favorite things in this world are things that I very rarely have the opportunity to speak about out loud. I read about them, I type about them, so my pronunciation in this video series, you're going to hear it. It's off on almost everything we're going to be talking about. So I apologize ahead of time for that. Of the four, Laure Prunanec is the key figure and going to be the focus of this video. I adore Laure Prunanec's music. I think she's probably the most important artist, at least for me personally, working right now. All of her projects are phenomenal. Her primary band now is Racine. There's a new album hopefully coming out later this year for Racine. It's a fantastic band, and I love her work there. Oxo Zooks, also a band that she's part of, has another album coming out this year. El Ellipses, again, I'm mispronouncing that. L.A. Yipsies? I'm not sure how to say that out loud, but that's another fantastic project with a couple albums that are a little bit more mellow, more electronic, totally different feel than the other bands that she's part of. I think in time I will get to all of her other projects in this video series, but of course today the focus is going to be on Corpo-Mente. I think of all of her work, this is the one that has resonated with me the most. This album provided the soundtrack as I was writing my first book, XLZABK-001, or the Red Book, or just Book 1 if you want. It was always playing as I was writing these stories, providing constant nourishment. Even though the things I write about are not directly related to this project or Laure Prunanec or anything like that, it did sort of feed me in the background. Communicated ideas to me that I was able to translate into ideas for a story. I don't know if anybody involved in the band would like the things I write about. They probably wouldn't, but that's neither here nor there. It was there for me, and it still is there for me now, actually, as I'm about 2/3 of the way through the second book, which will be book 2, or the Blue Book in this case. All of Laure Prunanec's projects are providing the soundtrack for that one as well. There have been times in my life where I listened to nothing but Corpo-Mente for like an entire day. I used to have an hour commute to work. I would listen to it driving to work. It would be on loop the entire time I'm at work, and then I'd continue to listen to it on the way home. So like, I don't know, 12 hours or something like that of nonstop Corpo-Mente inside my head. So that's why this album that's not why it's so important, but that's why I wanted to make this the first video in this series. That's why we're going to talk about it today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the album. I'm not going to play the entire songs. I'm going to play clips from the songs. And I'm not going to play every song on the album either. Although there's not a bad moment on this album. Like, not 5 seconds of nonsense. It is absolutely stellar from start to finish. Every song is fantastic. Every moment of every song is fantastic as well. But we're just going to play clips of a couple of the songs that mean the most to me. And then afterwards, we'll kind of summarize. I think I've come to a conclusion on the album. I wondered for the longest time why this album has resonated with me so much. And after sort of preparing for this video, I think I've come to a conclusion why this means so much to me. So at the very end, we're going to summarize it and basically I'll explain to you why this is probably the most important album for me in the last 10 years. Okay, we're going to start at the very beginning of the very first track, Celia. Again, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but let's play it, and here we go. All right, I'm going to stop it right there. So, what is this going to be? If you're completely unfamiliar with this band and this project, and you're listening to this for the first time, there's no way to predict what kind of album this is going to be. It starts off with blatant mystery, soothing introduction to the first song, but we don't know what direction it's going to go in. The chord progression of that introduction part is strange in itself. It does convey a certain element of mystery, and there's a mystic quality to what we're hearing, but we don't know. This could be straight up heavy metal. This could be some weird ambient project. This could be something noisy and drum and bassy. I mean, we don't know. And I absolutely love that. It sets the tone for the rest of the album, because throughout this album, you're not going to be able to predict what happens. Everything that does happen makes sense. It's not random. It's not absurd. It's all logically assembled, but unpredictable at the same time. So let's go ahead and keep playing the beginning of this first song. Right, I'm going to stop it again. So what there's a strange like waltz like rhythm happening in this song. Very unpredictable. You wouldn't imagine that would be the case. But it's old European. You're going to probably hear me mention this theme throughout, but the rhythm of this first song sounds aristocratic, old European. Um, there's an electronic fill though, like at the very end, right before I stopped it, it just makes an electronic sound. So wait a second. So this is like old, almost archaic aristocrat music with some modern contemporary electronic bits in there. And you could tell in the production right away that this is a very heavily processed album. But then on top of all that, you've got this dynamic voice that starts off soothing and calm and mysterious, mystic in the beginning. But the way that she's able to transition her voice into something that is almost like, to me, it sounds like she's screaming through the ages of time. I know this is going to sound weird to a lot of you guys, but she's connecting the ancient, or at least the past, with the present and potentially the future in her voice, barreling through the old to the new. And then on top of that, what is she saying? What language is this? We don't know. Like I'm trying to describe this album to you as if you hadn't heard it before, and maybe you have, but we don't know. I don't know what these words are. I'm listening to it. I'm trying to identify what language is this. We don't know. Again, it's adding to the mystery. So more to come back on that as well. That's all I'm going to play for the first song. Let's move on to the second song, Arceline. All right, stopping it again. So, of course, if you know Laure Prunanec, she's very operatic. So there's her voice at the beginning of this clip is sophistication. It's operatic. It's opera, and it morphs into a very somber, to me, sounding like a very somber 1930s choral arrangement. I think of like a lot of the movies I enjoy, like Depression era movies, had the same sort of like underwater somber choral arrangements to them, and that's really what that sounds like in the second part of that clip to me. um, Her voice, though, she has this ability to morph her voice from something that is sophisticated to something that is primal. And she does that throughout this album. And it's just a way of conveying an unbridled passion. The source of that passion for her, I don't know. But we're going to come back to this theme throughout the album, the theme of like sophistication morphing into some sort of primal savagery, back to sophistication, and then back again, um, as expressed through Laure Prunanec's voice. So that's all I'm going to play for this song. Let's move on to the next one, Fia. That's a song that I'm actually able to pronounce a bit better, Fia. All right, let's stop it there. So, more things happening now in this song. At the very beginning, at the very end, I'm not a guitarist. I don't use the correct guitar terminology, but there's almost the fast strumming that you hear like that. I don't know if that's an arpeggio or what that is. That's not strumming either. It's fast picking. I don't know. There's a certain sound that is characteristic to me in my mind, and from what I understand, of like European peasantry. Is that the right way to say it? I envision a rural setting when I hear that type of music. It's almost like the type of music that you might hear. It's almost like gypsy music. I know it's not, but it conjures those same images, that same sense to me in my brain. And we hear that at the beginning of that clip, and then we hear it at the end of that clip. And that aesthetic, that the opposite of the aristocratic waltz that we heard in the first song and that we hear throughout the album. The opposite of that sophistication is like a bit of just everyday peasantry. And that's not, I know I'm using words that probably aren't in the right context for a lot of people, but this is how I envision it in my mind. Um, that juxtaposition of those two things throughout the album, going back and forth, wavering back and forth, connecting with both of those types of sociological European experiences. Again, forgive me if this makes no sense to you, but this is how I hear it. And then from that, it just dissolves into this despondency, this chorus guitar, almost like it makes me think of like like late 90s Bethlehem, where there's just like that despondent loneliness, emptiness, the peasantry leading to the emptiness, and then coming back again to sophistication later. And then again, her voice in this section of the song, to me, it just sounds like the weeping, the cries of old Europe. That's how I hear it. Old Europe crying from the past, lost and despondent. It really hits me hard. So, yes, that is what I'm going to play for you from Fia. Um, we're going to move on to one of the highlights of the album, Dorma, next. All right. So that is just the section of Dorm. I'm not going to play any more of the song, but let's come back to her language. What where is this from? Where does where do these words originate? They're sort of Latin. They're sort of not Latin. Um, she invents her own language. So and she does this with many of her projects. These aren't words that we know, but they're words that she knows, and they sound completely logical in the context of the music. Um, she invents the words to suit the music, to suit what she's trying to communicate, what she's channeling. Quite honestly, it's just absolutely phenomenal. I listened to some other musicians who have invented their own language, or use words that aren't um, or use words that are not part of our normal vocabulary. And no one does it better than Laure Prunanec, I think, because her words suit the music perfectly. Her voice here, she's going from from pain, from sorrow, from grief to prestige, and then back again to pain and sorrow, and then back again to prestige, finishing in this operatic voice of sophistication again. She's owning the pain. That's what I'm hearing. She's internalizing it. She's taking the suffering of the ages, bringing it inside, transfiguring it into something else. Something that's why I said at the beginning of this, there's an optimism here. It's a future of positivity born from the suffering of the past. She's capitalizing on that suffering. Um, it's a sophistication that exists in her voice, in this music, in this album, um, created from generations of older world suffering. I don't like anime. I want to make sure I make that clear. But there are certain anime from the golden age of anime that are legitimately important. They were serious pieces of work. Angel's Egg is one of those. So throughout this album, I associate a lot of the the sentiments here with that anime Angel's Egg because it's a very European anime. It's a very old European anime with futurism, with desperation and hope all wrapped in together. So I associate this album frequently with the visuals from that particular anime. Okay, that was Dorma. We're going to move on to the next one, which is Dulcine. All right, let me stop it there for a second. So we're hearing distorted doom metal guitars, which suit this aesthetic perfectly for this album. They come and go throughout different songs at different periods of time. But what makes this so effective to me is that these distorted guitars, these doom chords, are performed underneath this vocal of absolute clarity. It's the sparkling, it's the glimmer on top of the depression of these guitars. So I love that. I'm going to keep playing it. Let's let it go from here. I'm gonna stop it again. So her voice goes down like an octave or two. Again, I'm a retired musician. I forgot most of what I used to know about music, but she does something with her voice that's not pitch control in the studio. That is her natural voice going down that low. That just it the whole thing just dissolves into this entropy. There's a lonely sense of poverty in her voice there, and then that arpeggiated guitar, that old world rural guitar comes back in um, right after the distorted guitars that we heard just a few seconds ago. This section of the song, I mean, this is dying. This is the old world's death, but delivered to us orally with this voice of truth, this impressively controlled voice that doesn't waver. It communicates the death, but doesn't waver. It's still pitch. I'm not a vocal coach. I just know when I hear something and it sounds true. This is a voice that is true in what it's conveying. So let me just keep going. We're going to play it right from here. Right, let me stop it there. I could just keep playing it. I gotta know when to stop. Um, so after that section of like poverty and death, it transcends into straight up metal chords. Why? Like why? To me, that this is the old that was broken being revitalized. It's being strengthened with these powerful chords. It's a resurrection. It's death being resurrected, but coming back stronger and more aggressive than it was in the past. Um, then there's things that happen in the studio where there's like an LFO that is applied to the guitars. It's chopping up the guitars to create a riff out of just a straight chord. Um, an electronic technique that you wouldn't think would happen in a project like this. This is why this is not like a goth album. You know, this is maybe a goth aesthetic, but being handled by modern contemporary techniques. And again, it's that combination of the old and the new, the classic and the contemporary meeting together and forging something new. Um, After that, it goes back to sophistication again, and it becomes soothing, and then we have strings. So it's just this back and forth, taking the death of the past, old Europe dying, resurrecting it, strengthening it. It's reinvigorated, and it becomes sophisticated once again. It's a rebirth cycle that we're hearing in a lot of these songs. So I'm going to stop. I could play the entire song of Dulcine, but I'm going to stop right there. We're going to move on. We're going to skip Ort. I'm going to come back to Ort, which is the next song on the album. We're going to play that last. I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to play a little bit of Saili. Again, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Saili is going to come up next here. I just wanted to play that one section of Sail Ye, I believe. Um, Great beats. This is Gutierrez's contribution, I think, obviously. Um, there's like a breakcore section of that song. Again, this is from an album of 2015 as well, so keep that in mind. Where that was not common to hear that sort of thing mixed with something that's metal or gothic, and that's primarily the drive for Igor, quite honestly. But here it doesn't sound absurd like that sort of, and I say that with respect because Igor, that band is deliberately absurd, but it doesn't sound that way here. It fits. It's a scattering. It's a confusion that's happening with those breakbeats are conveying a confusion, and at the same time that's happening, we hear Laure. She just puts a curse on something. I mean, her voice there, she's like spitting a curse with that confusion of breakbeat. She's channeling that spasticness into her voice. Again, a completely fabricated language. This is her language. We don't know what she's saying, but whatever it is, to me, it sounds like she's cursing somebody. And then, of course, we come back to the metal again after that. And I use the term metal loosely. In this video series, I'm going to hopefully do some videos on actual, like, straight up metal, which is quite different than this. I'm being very generous by using the term metal, but it's a term that is the easiest way to convey those sort of chords and that sort of guitar sound. So that's all I'm going to play from Say Li. I'm so sorry about the pronunciation. The next song we're going to play is the song that's before this on the album, track 8, Ort. I can certainly pronounce Ort. So I think Ort is the highlight of the album for me. I think it's the best song on the album. I think it's Laure Prunanec's greatest performance on the album. She goes all over the place on this song. The composition of this song in the song as well is outstanding. It's above and beyond everything else on an already perfect album. So here comes Ort. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. That's the beginning of the song. That's how it begins. We've got that, in my mind, 1930s choral arrangement again, that underwater chorus in the background with the strumming guitar. I just really like that. I don't know of anything else out there today that conveys that same sort of feeling for me. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We're going to move forward to another section of the song. All right, here we go. Stopping it there again. I love this section of this song. It has there's like a early 1960s, the first half of the 1960s guitar tone happening. It's almost like a surf guitar. It's like the Lost Beach sort of sound. The Van Duras did that very well. several decades back. But I love that, and that guitar comes into this album at different points. This is kind of the first time I'm mentioning it, but you do hear that from time to time. It just conveys that, and there's a an element of the sea, like the ocean, the sea in this album as well. The video for the album has Laure and Gutier out in the ocean doing their things. But there is a beachy quality to this. It's not it's not like party at the beach. It's like the world has ended and we're at the edge of the land, looking out at the sea. There's one of my favorite filmmakers is Jean Rollin. Jean's passed away now, of course, but his films often ended in the same location in France. He's a French erotic horror director, is the best way to describe him. But they're always very dreamlike films, and they always end at the same beach. And that early '60s guitar tone, that surf guitar feel, really it's just very appropriate for the images that are being conveyed with this part of the song. Anyways, I went on a long tangent about that, but it moves from that, then it goes back to that in my mind 1930s choral arrangement again, and then it comes back to that old Europe with that guitar arpeggiating. I just love that. It just moves from different generations of time, all in like a 1 minute section of the song, very fluidly as well. None of it feels abrupt. It's all very appropriate. So I've paused the song. I'm gonna press play, and what you're gonna hear next is it's just the one of the most savage screams that I think has ever been recorded. It's a primal scream that is controlled. It's a savagery under wraps. It's an intelligent savagery. You're going to hear it, and you may know this album. You may have heard it. You know what I'm going to do. But when I press play, you're going to hear it. And if you haven't heard it before, hopefully you'll have the same response to it as I did the first time. Here we go. Right. Let me just stop it there. To me, that moment is the quintessential moment of the album. That scream, because it is the scream of the old into the modern. It's conjuring the past into the present and into the future. And then it transitions into almost like a black metal riff. I'm thinking it sounds to me like that there's some processing there making it feel black metally, but it does have the same sensation that you get from some of the better black metal bands. I absolutely adore that moment. All right, so we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Let me move forward in the song. I don't want to play the entire song because I think you should hear this song on your own. I think you should buy the album, of course. And of course, I'll put a link where you could buy the album in the description of this video. But let me skip ahead a little bit and then we'll continue from there. Wow. So yes, there's an old world chanting that we hear at the beginning of that section, where it's like the old world is commanding something to the new world. The new world is like suffering. Her voice it's crackly, it's broken, but as it breaks at the end of the song, it returns. It's reborn once again to that sophistication, to that control over the circumstances that caused the breaking in the first place. Again, it's old Europe being reborn and transfigured into something contemporary and powerful and strengthened in the modern times. Absolutely fantastic. Like I said, Ort is my favorite song on the album. There's a live in studio performance of that song that I would recommend you check out as well. Absolutely phenomenal. It's still, I mean, I've heard this, like I said, there's been like 1,000 times that I've listened to this album and this particular song, and it still hits me every single time and never gets old. Okay, that's it. That's going to be the last song that I play for you. Let me just wrap this up and summarize my feelings and come back to the reason why I think this is such a great album and why it's the most important album for me from the last 10 years. Okay, let's take a minute to summarize Corpo-Mente. This is a purely European album. It's a piece of art that takes the classic, the archaic, the old world, frankly, the dead Europe, and thrusts it into the modern contemporary world that we live in now. It pays homage to the traditional elements of old Europe, but reinforces those traditions with modern arrangements, modern techniques, and like I've said throughout, I've used the word sophistication so many times in this video, but reinforcing it with a new world sophistication. And I think that's where that little glimmer of hope comes in, the optimism of the album. In proportion to the despondency expressed in the album, it's small. There's not a lot of hope here, but it is there. It's a glimmer of hope, and it's available for those that can hear it and find it in the recording. This sophistication, I'm using that word again, it's not a word that I use very often, but it's rooted in a sort of primal emotion. It's restraining that primal emotion, that savagery, restraining it, holding on to it, and then releasing it after it's been stored up, and releasing it with a power and an aggression that is only capable because of the enduring of that suffering from the past, from perhaps even from childhood. Who knows? But there's something there in the past that created suffering that was stored, harnessed, and then released aggressively with power. The other thing about this album is it really communicates an understanding of the worst elements of the human experience. And it does it from a perspective of intelligence. I know that's weird, but it's what makes it different than like, I don't know, like a blues album or something where there are songs expressing the suffering of the human condition, but they stay in that position of suffering. The musician is stuck there. There's no way to elevate out of it. This is understanding that intelligently and getting past it. Corpo-Mente expresses the pain and the suffering of the intellectual. It's a perspective that we don't get very often in most art. It does this in such a way that those that are affected by that unique type of pain, and those that can take that pain, internalize it, and transfigure it into power, those that can take the old and the dead and resurrect it to not only live but thrive in the contemporary and the modern world. Those that can do that have this ability, they have an understanding, a belief that their unique pain and suffering is greater than those that do not have that same ability to transfigure it. Whether that's right or wrong or true or false, that's the feeling I get from this album. The combination of the primal and the sophisticated, the old and the new, the traditional elements of old Europe and the modern production techniques of the contemporary world. It is a rebirth. It is the old becoming the new, and becoming the new stronger and better than it was before. All of that communicates to me a very personal and private series of pains and triumphs. A type of pain and triumph that nobody other than the listener is capable of understanding. That's where this bridges just music. That's where this becomes something more than just a series of notes recorded on a computer. It becomes a philosophical statement that's not really capable of expressing in words. And I think that's why Laure Prunanec is the perfect person to conjure that sensation using a language that only exists in her mind. It's very personal to her, and it makes it very personal to the listener. So thank you for watching this video. If you made it to the end, I appreciate that. This is the first in the series. Hopefully you'll stick around as I publish more of these. I'm going to go through all sorts of different types of music. I wanted to lead with Corpo-Mente because, like I said a couple times now, it is the most important album for me personally from the last 10 years. So thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.